Hello and welcome to Comment with me, Roshan, Muhammed, Salih, standing in for George Galloway this week, who's currently standing as a candidate in the UK local and European elections. On today's show, we'll be discussing the most recent events in Syria, where Bashar al-Assad's forces are making major gains in the country's brutal conflict. We'll be discussing the huge Russia-China gas deal, which is another blow to Western hegemonic ambitions. And we'll also be keeping an eye on local elections in Europe, where far-right, anti-immigrant and Islamophobic parties look set to make progress. And you can call me on +44 208 601 5555 to share your views. You can also SMS me on +44 78 0000 8066, and you can email me on comment@presstv.co.uk. You can also follow us on Twitter @comment_presstv. And of course, we'll prioritise your views and calls if you disagree with what I'm saying. Okay, in Syria, pro-government forces are marching inexorably forwards. Earlier this month, Syria's third city, Homs, fell back into government hands, and just today, Syrian forces have broken a year-long siege of a prison in Aleppo. The prison has been the scene of fierce fighting for months as militants have tried to capture it. The area is strategically important as it lies near a key supply route for militants in Aleppo. If loyalist troops do win definitive control of the prison, it'll be seen as another blow to the opposition in advance of the June 3rd presidential election. Now, this news comes as Russia and China vetoed a UN Security Council resolution to refer the Syria crisis to the International Criminal Court to investigate alleged war crimes by all sides. Russia called the Western-sponsored resolution a publicity stunt. More than 150,000 people have been killed since the war began in 2011, and Russia argues that the move will destroy any chance of a peaceful solution to the civil war. But Western powers, on the other hand, say the Syrian government forces have committed numerous war crimes, including systematic torture, chemical attacks, and indiscriminate barrel bombing campaigns. Jihadist militants have meanwhile been accused of carrying out mass execution of detainees. So what do you think? Is the Syrian war leading to inevitable defeat for the militants and by extension the West and Israel? What will the upcoming presidential election mean for Syria's future? Or do you think this war has a long way yet to run? So our main question is, why does the West reject Syria's upcoming elections? Now on to our second story. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has signed a multi-billion-dollar 30-year gas deal with China. The deal between Russia's Gazprom and China's National Petroleum Corps has been 10 years in the making. Russia has been keen to find an alternative energy market for its gas as it faces the possibility of European sanctions over the crisis in Ukraine. Now, this deal could symbolize an important moment of transition when, both in economic and geopolitical terms, Russia's gaze begins to look more towards the east than towards the west. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for the creation of a new Asian organization for security cooperation with the participation of Iran and Russia. Iran, China and Russia are keen to form an alliance with each other and other Asian countries and defend their national interests against the United States and a number of European allied countries. So again, what do you think? Does the Russia-China deal deal a further blow to US imperialism? The West is fuming that it can't get its way in Ukraine and Syria. So does Barack Obama's so-called pivot towards Asia show his understanding that the hegemony of the United States is under threat or even coming to an end? So we're asking, why would a China-Russia-Iran alliance threaten the West? Finally, Europe's mammoth parliamentary elections kicked off today, with Britain and the Netherlands going to the polls in a vote that is expected to see a swing towards populist right-wing parties. The elections, which are spread over 4 days in the EU's 28 member states, are expected to see major gains for parties bent on dismantling the European Union from the inside. The anti-immigration and anti-EU UK Independence Party of Nigel Farage, for example, and Geert Wilders' virulently anti-Islam Party of Freedom are both forecast to make gains, big gains. But with 26 million people out of work across the EU, including more than half of those aged under 25 in countries such as Greece and Spain, Eurosceptic and far-right parties have picked up massive support on anti-immigration, anti-Muslim and anti-EU platforms. So again, what do you think? Is Europe's future a right-wing Islamophobic nightmare amid economic doom and gloom? Or is this just a protest vote before more mainstream parties are returned to power in general election in the coming years? So please call in. We have 3 topics tonight. As I said, we have Syria, we have the huge, massive China-Russia deal, and we also want to talk about the elections that are taking place across Europe. Now, I believe we have our first caller on the line tonight, and it's Richard from Nigeria. Richard, welcome to Comment. Please go ahead. What would you like to say?
Yes, good evening, sir. This is Richard from Nigeria. Seriously, I would like to talk about the Russia and the China deal. You know, there is one thing that the U.S. are scared of. Both the Russia and the China economies are really trying to come up. Now, if those two economies should merge, trust me, the U.S. are nowhere to, there will be nowhere to be found. The U.S. are really scared of these two countries. That is why they are trying all their possible best to see that those two countries do not merge, or those two countries do not come together, to see that at least they achieve something. The U.S. are really trying to put the whole world under their feet so that they will control.
Yeah.
All right,
yes,
coming to other countries.
I mean, Richard, I think we have to be realistic and admit that the US is still the #1 power in the world, both economically and militarily. It controls the world's oceans, therefore it controls the world's trade to a large extent, and militarily it is light years ahead of anyone else. That said, Russia and China are the next 2 countries, and if they can form an alliance and a bloc, then they can effectively block the US and its imperial ambitions in places like Africa, Asia, the Middle East. What do you say to that, Richard?
Now, quite true. The U.S. is still the world power, undisputably. But the Russian economy and the Chinese economy, now those two economies, they have the prospect to grow in the next few years more than the American economy. So that is why you see the U.S. are quick to put sanctions on the Russian economy to see that they do not grow. Why is it that they didn't do that to the Israeli economy? Yes, the Israelis, they've committed worse atrocities more than that of the Russians.
Yeah. Yes, and it's interesting to note that at the moment, the West, especially Europe, is trying to apply sanctions on Russia because of the crisis in Ukraine. They say that Russia has effectively annexed Crimea, for example, and stoking trouble in eastern Ukraine. But those sanctions now seem completely irrelevant after this Russia-China gas deal, because now ultimately Russia is looking for alternative customers. It doesn't want to rely on Europe so much, and now it's looking towards China to be its massive customer and its source of income. So yeah, would you agree with that, Richard, that effectively that this huge China-Russia deal has made those sanctions against Russia by the EU completely irrelevant?
Yeah, yes, truly, I do believe, because that fear is there. That is why they are trying to lay all these sanctions and see that they do not progress or they do not grow more than them. The Chinese yuan have the prospect to be more than the US dollars very soon. Very soon. But imagine in China, we now have bomb blasts. That is so weird. And there is no way they will tell us that there is no US backup in that thing. We in Africa, we believe that the U.S. have a hand in whatever is going on in China, Russia, and in other countries.
But Richard, can I ask you a question? Because obviously China is very powerful now in Africa, all over Africa, massive construction projects and, involved in the oil and gas industry in that continent. Do you see China as a threat, like America would be a threat?
Yes, China is really, we feel the impact. We see what they are doing. Their exports, the phones, other things. Seriously, going or having a bilateral relationship with China means a lot. And trust me, if Africa and other countries, if Africa and other countries come together and also, shall I say, we go into a bilateral relationship with China, it will be better for us than that of the Western relationship.
Thank you very much for your call all the way from Nigeria, Richard. I mean, I would just add that personally, I don't see China as the imperial power that the United States is. When the United States comes, it comes with its military. When China comes, it comes to do business. So I think there is a massive, distinction, and I don't think you can talk about Chinese imperialism like we talk about US imperialism. We have another caller online. Majid is in Iran, and Majid would like to talk about Syria, specifically the upcoming elections in Syria. Majid, welcome to comment, and please go ahead and make your point.
Hi, Roshan.
Hello.
Hi. As you said, I'm going to talk about the issue of Syria.
Sure.
As you know, the upcoming elections in Syria is a kind of, a sign of, we can say, of, the goal and the determination of the people of Syria, and it shows that people in Syria, are really willing to, to build their own country, their future of their own country, and they are not willing to see the other countries like the United States of America, or his allies in the region, to intervene in the issues of Syria.
Majid, can I ask you a quick question? Now, obviously, you've put that point of view across very eloquently, but Western nations would say that you cannot hold presidential elections in Syria at this point when the country is in chaos and the country is in war. What do you say to that?
Of course, I think that these countries, and as I said, the United States of America, these kind of elections and stability in Syria, is not to their benefits. I think that, so that's why that these countries are not eager to see, these elections in Syria and, to witness, kind of stability in this country. And I think that, they are looking for their own benefits. And, I think that, these problems that have currently, are currently happening in Syria are kind of plots made by, those countries.
Yes, obviously, I think a lot of people now, at the beginning of the Syria crisis, I think a lot of people felt that it was a human rights issue and they felt very sorry for people that were being killed. But I think the narrative of the war has changed over the last few years, and I think now increasing numbers of people can see it for what it is, what I believe it is, and that's an imperial war, effectively, by imperial nations such as the United States and their proxies in the region like Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Turkey. But Majid, I want to ask you, are these presidential elections going to, you talk about stability, are these presidential elections going to bring stability to Syria?
Yes, of course. I think that's Saudi, as you said, these countries in the region are not willing to have to see the stability in the region, and I think that the presidential elections can help the country and the region to have kind of stability, and I think that it is the Syrian people will determine their own future, and I think that it is something that I myself believe that Syrian people will build their own future, by attending these elections, and I think that
and voting in numbers. And
yeah, they will give a blow to the the United States of America.
Well, imagine it's certain that if there's a high voter turnout and if Bashar al-Assad is re-elected, which is obviously very likely, then the West is not going to be very happy about that for sure. Thank you very much, Majid, for your call all the way from Iran. And we're going all around the world now, from Nigeria to Iran, now to Portugal. We have Christina. Thank you very much for calling in, Christina. I'm not sure what you'd like to talk about, but please go ahead and make your point.
Okay.
Go ahead, Christina.
Okay.
Christina, you're on. Hi, Christina. I'm not sure whether you can hear me, but you're on the air. Please go ahead and make your point.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, why I called in is on Monday I saw some rather disturbing footage of two young teenage Palestinian boys being murdered in cold blood underneath a motorway flyover somewhere in Israel, and it was caught on CCTV. Don't you think this really goes to show what an absolutely outrageous regime? Well, apparently the murders were done by the Israeli Defense Force.
Yes.
Doesn't this just go to show what an absolutely outrageous regime there is? And it is showing the whole world what they will do just to keep the Palestinians down.
Yeah, Christina, I saw the video myself. I mean, Palestine isn't one of the topics tonight, but I will talk about it because ultimately we take our direction from our viewers and our listeners. But I did see that footage, and ultimately I think there were a few kids throwing stones at soldiers. Like they do, because the soldiers have got guns, they've got tanks, they've got heavy artillery and light weapons, and those kids, they have nothing to defend themselves, so they throw stones. That is their form of resistance, if you like. And they were shot in cold blood. And that video went viral all over the world. And I think it does demonstrate the brutality of the Israeli occupation forces. So thank you very much for flagging it up, Christina. Would you like to, I'll let you come back, Christina. Would you like to say anything else?
Well, the only thing I was going to say is this deal with Iran, Russia and China over the oil and gas, I think it's brilliant because they've put two sort of metaphorical fingers up to the West and their cosy little alliances, haven't they?
Yeah, I think they have. I think that ultimately there's a massive change going on in the world. At the end of the 1990s and throughout the early years of this century, America was all supreme. It could do whatever it wanted to do. It invaded Afghanistan and Iraq in the face of world opinion. And it didn't hesitate to do that because no one could challenge it. But I think since Vladimir Putin came into power, in Russia especially, and with the economic rise of China, we're seeing a real change in the balance of world power. As I said before, I think we shouldn't be under any illusion. The US is still ahead, militarily and economically. But what you're seeing now is these rising world powers making alliances with each other. You have Brazil, you have South Africa, you have Iran. And they're all allying with each other in an attempt, a very successful attempt, I would say as well, to block the United States and its imperialistic ambitions. And the proof of that is that the West did not get its way in Syria. It wanted Bashar al-Assad to fall, it wanted to defeat Iran, and it wanted to defeat Hezbollah in Syria. It was a proxy war, and it has completely failed. And also we're seeing that the same kind of thing in Ukraine. The West tried to take down Ukraine as a means to militarily surround Russia. And again, Putin took Crimea, responded, and now it looks like the West strategy in Ukraine is completely in disarray. Thank you very much, Christina, for calling in from Portugal and for making those very good points. We're going to move on now, again, moving all over the world, back into the African continent. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. It's Dwyer, is it, from Zambia? Please go ahead. And yes, sorry if I mispronounced your name.
Ambwalia.
Okay. Welcome to the show. Please go ahead. What would you like to talk about?
I'd like to talk about the election in Syria.
Okay, go ahead.
I think sometimes I wonder if the West ever listen to themselves as they speak. They're saying Syria cannot hold an election, but they're still going ahead and pressing for an election in Ukraine, which is going almost the same kind of unrest in Ukraine. Why can Syria hold an election if Ukraine is going to hold an election? They're just trying to find a way to remove Assad from government and not address the many challenges that Syria is currently facing.
Well, Dwyer, I mean, let me cut in there. The reason why Ukraine can hold an election is because Kiev, the government in Kiev, is pro-Western. And the reason why Syria can't hold an election is because the government in Damascus is anti-Western.
Yes, that's my point. I'm trying to say they should try to be objective in the way they try to resolve most of these conflicts. They are trying to force their interests into Ukraine, but when they see they cannot do the same in Syria, they try to come up with a way to continue just to remove the current government and usher in a government that they are going to actually influence, and a government that is going to be pro-Western, unlike the one that is there for its people.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't think it is the ideal time to hold elections in terms of the ideal conditions, rather. I mean, constitutionally, they have to hold an election before July because Bashar al-Assad's term expires. But the ideal conditions for holding elections are not war conditions. I think everyone will admit that. But ultimately, what is the most important thing for Syria now? It is a political solution, it is stability. And if they didn't hold elections, then the country would be plunged into further chaos, I think. So personally, even though it isn't the ideal time to hold elections by any stretch of the imagination, I think that the government in Damascus has no choice but to go ahead and hold these elections. Dwyer, thank you very much for calling all the way from Zambia. We're going to take another call now. Ramzan is in South Wales here in the UK. Ramzan, thank you very much for calling in tonight. Much appreciated. What would you like to talk about, please?
Syria and also China. Assalamu alaikum to you, first of all.
Wa alaikum salam.
And it's a beautiful have you back on. I haven't seen you for a long time.
I've been around. I haven't been around.
Yeah.
You haven't been watching Press TV. Anyway, go ahead.
Right. Basically what it is, it's regarding Syria election, right? The reason why West doesn't want to say it's okay, because it's not their puppet president standing. And so therefore, whatever country they haven't got their puppet standing, they're always opposing the legitimate government of that country. If there was a puppet standing on behalf of them and he was going to get elected, then that's fine. Look what's happening in Ukraine. It's all right for them, right, to say it's okay, these elections are all right because it's their puppet standing. And so that's their whole policy around the world, but it's actually backfiring on them now, because you see yesterday the China and Russia have signed this biggest deal in this century, and the European and American don't like it because they won't be dealing in dollars, and they'll be dealing in rubles, in Russia currency. And so that is, I'm really happy about that, because I want more of this. This is what I was saying back last year on your on Press TV on Comets with George Galloway, and saying that they should all get together, the Asian subcontinent and from Africa as well, and make their own UN as a body, so where they can work together and have these powerful links with one another, and also build a alliance military like they have done NATO, the European continent. They should have one with the Middle Asia subcontinent, same body as that. Then the America will think twice about attacking any other country in the world. At the moment, it's got free hand. It can do whatever it likes in the world. Whatever America say, whether it's, everything what they say is wrong, because it's all propaganda against the legitimate country of the country. What they say, oh, we want human rights, we want to give them freedom of speech. They don't. There's no freedom of speech in America. You say something against the Jewish lobby, you get arrested straight away. So where is the freedom of speech? And same in Britain here, right? Why did they ban your press TV for? Because you were giving honest value.
Ramzan, I'm going to have to stop you there. It's excellent call, but I'm going to have to stop you because we are running out of time in this segment of the show, and we're going to have to take a short break. But please stay tuned for more topical discussion. We're asking, why does the West reject Syria's upcoming elections? Why would a China-Russia-Iran alliance threaten the West? So please don't go anywhere. I'll be back after this short news bulletin. Welcome back to Comment. We've been discussing the war in Syria, the rise of Russia and China amid the decline of America, and the rise of far-right parties in Europe. So we're asking, why does the West reject Syria's upcoming elections? And why would a China-Russia-Iran alliance threaten the West? So without further ado, I'd like to get back to your calls if possible, if we have someone online. Just to remind you about the questions again, we did have some very excellent callers in the first half of the show, very impressed by that. And I'm actually going to interrupt myself because we do have a caller online, and it's from Libya, Sunny from Libya. Thank you very much. Your country is in a bit of chaos at the moment, isn't it? Please go ahead and make your point.
Yeah. I want to talk of Syria.
Okay, so you want to talk about Syria? Okay.
Yeah, you know, it gives me joy whenever I see Assad making gains.
Okay.
Moving forward, dropping the rebels down, it gives me joy. You know, I find it difficult to understand what Arab brothers are doing with their fellow brothers, killing themselves instead of bring them together and make peace with each other.
Yeah.
They find it difficult to make peace.
Yeah, I mean,
what they do. Hello?
Yes, I mean, so I was just going to say that, you know, since the beginning of the Arab Spring, it's been quite heartbreaking, really, to see Arabs fighting each other. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of us were very optimistic at the start of 2011 when we saw these pro-Western dictators being toppled. But I really think that it started to go wrong, didn't it? In Bahrain, in Libya itself, when NATO intervened in Libya. And then it just became a disastrous situation in Syria. And we really haven't seen much positive progress in Egypt either, with a military coup taking place there last year. And I think we see the sectarianism issue as well, rearing its ugly head with Arab fighting Arab, Muslim fighting Muslim. I think really the situation is quite dire, but I do think we see some, as you say, it gives you joy to see you know, Assad advancing in Syria. Obviously he is opposed by lots of people as well, but I think you know, I think perhaps there are some signs of hope that people realize that perpetual war is going to achieve nothing. It's just going to divide the people of the Middle East and the Arab world. And it's going to be to Israel's benefit. It's going to be to the West's benefit. I'll let you come back in, Sonny.
Yes, yes. The thing is that, you know, the Americans and the Europeans, what they know is to make Muslims, Arabs fight each other so that they will not sit down to talk about the real thing. The real thing is Palestine.
Yes, and no one's talking about Palestine, now, are they? I take your point.
Yeah,
thank you very much, Sonny in Libya. We're going to move on because we've got so many calls on the line, but I do appreciate your call. And a very good point to end there. The strategy is to get Arabs and Muslims fighting each other. I believe that is the strategy, because if they're fighting each other, they're not fighting the real enemy, Israel. And Palestine is an issue that's completely been forgotten. It was the central issue for Arabs and Muslims for many, many years. And now we're not talking about Palestine anymore. We're not talking about occupation and oppression in Palestine. It's like a sideshow to what's going on elsewhere. And it would be great if we could focus on the real central issue in the Islamic Ummah, and not just for Muslims, but non-Muslims as well. And that central issue, of course, is Palestine. We have Afzal on the line, and Afzal is in London. Thank you very much for calling in, Afzal. Much appreciated. I'm not sure what you want to talk about, but please go ahead and make your point.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Muhammed.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, I want to talk about the Syria upcoming election.
Okay.
Which is the American against it. You see, Americans are right if there's a civil war going on in Syria. But in my opinion, there's no civil war. It's the outside foreign-backed fighting Syria. But if you look at the Ukraine, over there, there's a civil war brewing. And America are all for it when it comes to the election. And they've actually warned Russia not to interfere. You see? So the Americans, they're not using their brain, they're using their brawn, you know, like the big bully.
What do you think, Afzal, can I ask you a question? What do you think is going to happen in Syria? It looks as though Assad has the momentum there, with Homs falling, with gains being made in the Qalamun area, all over, really, Syria. He seems like on an inexorable march towards, if not victory, then near victory. Do you share that opinion?
Well, you see, hopefully, inshallah, it'll get better. But now it has started. Americans won't leave it alone. They will do their best, because at the end of the day, their goal is Iran. Their goal is Hezbollah. So anything to weaken Syria so they can get one step closer to Hezbollah, the Lebanon, and then final goal is Iran. You see, so I would say, inshallah, it should get better, but it won't be the same as before.
Yes.
Like tranquility, you know, you can go for ziyarat, you can go for holidays without any problem. So, as I said, you know, but inshallah, as I say, you never know, you know, inshallah it should get better. But Americans will interfere. They will have to interfere, because this is in their nature.
So you don't think the US is going to accept defeat? I mean, it looks as though that the militants, the opposition, is in complete disarray in Syria, and even the countries backing that opposition are arguing amongst each other. There doesn't seem to be a coherent strategy from the opposition side, whereas the government side, there is a unified military and political command. The foreign countries that are backing Damascus are singing from the same hymn sheet. But you feel that the US will not ultimately accept complete defeat, which looks like might be on the horizon.
Yeah, because you see, I believe but if you look at the American history, wherever they go, where there's a peace and sovereignty, people are living in harmony, they have to disturb it, because it's their way or the highway, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So they have to do it, even though the militaries are fighting against each other. But the main players, the Saudis, the Qatars, they're not fighting.
Yes.
Can you see this? It's the main play. We got to keep
Well, they don't mind if other people shed blood, but they're not going to shed their own blood. Afzal,
exactly.
Thank you very much for your.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother, for your call. We're going to move on because, again, lots of calls from all around the world today. I'm really pleased about that. We have Hussein, who is in Bahrain. Obviously, Bahrain is another country that we don't talk about much anymore, where the focus is all on Syria and elsewhere. Bahrain has almost been completely forgotten. And that's why I'm very glad, Hussein, that you've called. Hussein from Bahrain, please go ahead and make your point. Welcome.
Good evening to you. Your name, sorry about that, because I came in the middle and I didn't recognize your name. I didn't follow. So anyhow, thank you for getting my call. And everybody talk about Syria, maybe Palestine, the whole Middle East. And you know that how long this war will go, I don't know. It may be going to be end very near future. But anybody think about the post-war what will happen after that. It's going to be stabilize the whole regions, Syria, Iraq.
What do you think? Do you think it's going to be stabilized?
And Israeli will be keeping quiet himself if there is all quiet over there. You think that?
Well, I mean, personally, I think that you know, in 2007, if we go back a few years, the states in the Middle East, there was the resistance axis anyway was very strong. Iran and Hezbollah had just defeated Israel in Lebanon. The Americans were in deep trouble in Iraq and Afghanistan. And personally, I think that they went for the Mad Max option, and that was they couldn't defeat, you know, Iran and Hezbollah. They couldn't defeat that alliance, so they went for the Mad Max option, and that was just to explode the whole region. So, you know, in a way, I think the people that are called conspiracy theorists that say that the upheavals across the Arab world were planned, I think that personally, I think there is some truth in that. Obviously, it's more complex than that. So I think it's going to be some years before a return to complete stability takes place. But compared to the disastrous years 2011, 2012, 2013, I do think we see you know, a few green shoots. We see alliances forming that will not accept destruction of the region. And we see those forces which are willing to destroy the region being sidelined or being militarily, politically defeated. So I do see the emergence, and I think the emergence of this Russia, China, Iran alliance is a good thing for the region because ultimately it will promote stability. Thank you very much, Hussein in Bahrain, from calling. We have another person, a gentleman, I think, from the Middle East, calling Jahir. I think I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Jahir is calling from Kuwait. Please go ahead and make your points.
Hello, good evening, Mr.
Good
Roshan.
evening. Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, regarding this, you know, alliance which you are discussing about.
Yes, go ahead.
In Russia and Iran. You know, when the Cold War was over between US and Soviet Union, everybody thought that it's going to be the turn of US and Islam next. But it seems that not Islam, but Muslims have shown their weakness, and they are not in a position to be a challenging power to US. So now it's the turn of somebody else to fill the gap. So at this point, this alliance is, you know, seems to be a natural possibility, but you know, one must not forget that there should be a commonality to establish a real alliance. I think Iran, China, and Russia are three different types of entities. For them to make a real alliance, you know, which is need of the hour, you know, to challenge any hegemony. You know, they should really establish some basis of their alliance. The alliance should have some fundamentals based on which it should be built on, so that, you know, it can really challenge the Western, you know, power. Because Western alliance has got its own natural advantages. You know, they have got the leadership of technology, economy, and many other factors. You know, international relations. So in that way,
you think. I mean, it's a very interesting point that you make, but you basically think that Russia, China, and Russia need to really work on deepening their ties culturally, economically, militarily, in order to be a real alliance.
Right. That's the basic thing. And the other thing is they have to look into this strength of the existing alliance. You know, they have got a lot of strengths. You know, they are really very good in handling international affairs. You know, they have been sharing so many advantages. The transatlantic alliance, which is really, you know, captured even Asian side like Japan, South Korea, and many other countries. You know, which are really strong in their fundamentals. So that's the basic point. Not the alliance should not stop with China, Russia, and Iran alone. They have to, you know, take hold of many powerful countries. It may be India, it may be some other Islamic countries who has the potential, like Turkey, they have to be very patient, very hardworking, and they have to be very cooperative also. It's not that you can just challenge the hegemony or existing power. You have to be cooperative, and you have to work hard to present yourself as an alternative. So that's what is the need of the world.
Thank you very much, Jahir, for your call there. It's actually an excellent call, excellent point that's made. Personally, I hope that this alliance that is forming between anti-imperialistic nations is not a short-term alliance of convenience, but can really develop into something which is long-term, has deep meaning. And I think that, Jahir, you're 100% correct. The economic, cultural, linguistic, everything, all these kind of militarily ties really have to be deepened so that this isn't just a short-term marriage of convenience. Thank you, Jahir in Kuwait. Barkan now is calling back where we are broadcasting from at the moment in London. Barkan, welcome to comment. Please go ahead and express yourself.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? You all right?
I'm fine. I'm very good, thank you, Barkan. Please go ahead and make your point.
Okay, I want to talk about Nigel Farage and what's happening in Britain.
Okay, good.
Okay. Basically, yeah, I do think people are half-hearted about him. They are just trying to scare Labour and the Conservatives because the stuff that is published here through the news, not a lot of people believe it. Honestly, they just don't. Because of social media and what it's brought, it's connected us more together. So people are more clued up with everything. Now,
so what do you think is going on? Do you think they're kind of building up Nigel Farage and the right-wing parties as, bogeymen or something? What's going on here?
Well, no. Well, Nigel Farage, I'll be honest, right, he is clever. He's the only one. He just wanted to get attention. He got attention as soon as he mentioned immigration. It's that simple. He mentioned immigration and everyone started turning. Heads started turning. Attention was, he caught the eye of everyone. Now he's explaining his views about Europe, and I do agree with Europe. We should govern ourselves. It's not fair with Brussels governing us. But obviously, people are half-hearted because of the immigration laws. Now, I love London. I live in London because it's very multicultural. I mean, people from all over the world. Like media can tell you one thing, but the people from that country can tell you something else. So
Barkan, when you get a tube train here at 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, let's call a spade. You don't see many English people, do you? It's all immigrants, and it's black people, it's brown people, it's yellow people, because they're the ones that are working hard.
Wait. First of all, there's only one people. You get black people, brown people, this person. If everyone got cut, they would all bleed the same colour. We are all one person. Now, before these laws come in with banks and systems, no one owned nothing. We was all free to walk around the world and explore. Like, this system comes in, and all of a sudden now we have to obey that. This is theirs. We're not allowed here because we ain't got a passport from there. Like, it's silly. We're all people. We should be allowed to see the world without having...
Barkan, who did you vote for today?
My point is that everyone is aware that, something's not right. No one's happy in Europe. We are not really that happy in Europe.
Yeah.
We should govern ourselves, but that brings us to the question, you see. So if we do pull out of Europe, then with Russia and China also, joining alliance, we would start trading with them because Farage will look for deals.
Yeah.
Barkan, they're afraid of Russia and China. Maybe militarily, you're right. They'll always control. But when you've got the economy by the hand, you'll be more stronger than.
Thank you very much, Barkan. Sorry to cut you off, but we have to take a few more calls before the end of the show. And what I would say is that, personally, on the European elections, it does look as though European far-right parties, Islamophobic parties are gaining ground. But personally, I don't see them as a massive threat. I think the mainstream parties they're the ones that have oppressed people. And I think, in a way, they're using these right-wing parties. They're probably quite happy that they exist, because they'll say, oh, you know, if you vote for them, you know, they'll get in. If you don't vote for us, they'll get in. But personally, I think it's the Labour Party in this country, the Conservative Party, the Lib Dems in alliance with the Conservatives, that have really hit working class people. They've hit immigrants. And personally, I see them as, you know, the real Islamophobes, if you like. And I think people like Nigel Farage and Geert Wilders, a bit of a sideshow, to be honest. Ali is in Italy. Ali, could you, go ahead and make your point.
Hello?
Ali Zilli in Italy, I believe you're on the line. Can you...
I'm on the line. Isaac.
You're on air, Ali. Please go ahead and make your point.
Okay, I should go ahead now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm hearing.
Ali Zilli, could you please turn your TV down, because there's an echo. And once you've turned your TV down, please just go ahead and make your point, because we are running out of time here. So please go ahead.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay.
Ali, I think we're going to have to move on, because you're not making your point. So we're going to move on to a call from Nigeria. And again, I'm not sure about the name, that I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's Labaran, I believe, in Nigeria.
Yes.
Thank you very much for calling all the way from Nigeria. Much appreciated your call. Please go ahead and make your point. And please turn your TV down, because there's an echo.
Yes, you see, I would like to let you understand, because what is going on in Syria and the rest of the Muslim world is not insurgency. You see, in intellectual parlance, there is always a difference between insurgency and terrorism. You see, we respected the team of the Press TV, because they always bring out the dissenting voice about the news globally. And because of this appreciation, I intend to join this discussion to let you know that, please, in your own news, stop calling those people in Syria as rebels. They are full-blown terrorists. And why the West is not interested in the forthcoming election by Assad. Assad became an independent president that will serve his people, the Syrian people. Now, if he is not ready to be a stooge, the fear of the West is that Assad is going to anoint his own person, who will take over from him in spirit and structure. And that is why the West is not interested in the election. Otherwise, the West wish that the terrorists will take over, which they have been calling them rebels. They are not rebels. I just watched a documentary in the press.
Labaran, if I can just ask you a question, are all the... if I can just ask you a quick question. So you're kind of rebuking Press TV for calling the Syrian opposition rebels. Actually, we don't. I'll just correct you there. We don't call them rebels. We call them militants. I believe that is the policy of the channel. But you want us to call them terrorists. Are they all terrorists? Every single element of the opposition are terrorists?
That is why I want to refer to the documentary I watched in the Press TV that bring out that I appreciate much. It tells me, it teaches me about the new concept of takfiri. Are you aware of this documentary? It was on the Press TV recently, about 3 days ago. Do you know takfiri? Now, what is happening in the Muslim world today is an emergence of a new concept of takfiri within the Islamic bond, and that they are taking the teachings of Islam differently, in a different direction. This confusion was created when the Americans intend, during Kennedy, to create what they call the Office of Strategic Influence in the White House, which Kennedy refused, and which now George Bush consented, and that office is there.
Labaran, you know, it's actually an excellent call that you're making and a great point that you're making. But I'm going to have to cut you off because it is the end of the show. I'm really sad to have to cut you off like that. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for all your calls and your excellent calls today. And George Galloway will be back in the hot seat next week. But from me, for now, it's goodbye. Thank you.
Hello, just comment your name and the place you left that number. And just make sure that your television volume set to 0. So 0. Can you spell your name for me? Yeah, I know. You redirect me through the phone number and then we'll call you back. Comment. Can I have your telephone